Welcome to the Canby Planning Commission for December 9th, 2019. Would you please stand with me for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance? Dear Lord, thank you for these commissioners that are here sacrificing their private time for the good of the citizens of Canby and for this fine staff that goes over so much with the builders and gives us all our points that we need to go over. And dear Lord, guide us in our decisions tonight and help us make the right ones. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I am Commissioner Boatwright. I'm sitting in for Commissioner Savory tonight, who's not here. So our first agenda is a citizen input on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for the audience members to address the Planning Commission on items not on the agenda. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. You are first required to fill out a testimony comment card prior to speaking and hand it to the recording secretary. These forms are available by the sign-in podium in the back. Staff and the Planning Commission will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizen input before tonight's meetings and or as quickly as possible thereafter. So are there any comments from the citizens out here? Okay, we don't have any minutes available for tonight. Brian, do we have any new business?
There is none.
Okay, this is a public hearing. To testify, please fill out a testimony comment or card in the back and give the recording secretary. Tofty Farms 6 subdivision. Applicant requests approval to subdivide a 4.6 acre parcel into 16 single-family residential tax lots with associated public infrastructure. This is the final phase of the Tofty Farms subdivision master plan, SUB 19-02. All right. This is a quasi-judicial public hearing. The matter presently before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please fill out the public testimony card and give to the recording secretary. At the appropriate time, when your name is called, please step forward to the microphone, state your name, address, and interest in the matter. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, these either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each. And those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report. The comprehensive plan or the applicable land use regulations with which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it's only to concur with previous testimony. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Anybody?
Yeah, just in an abundance of caution, I've defended several different clients against the Tofty Farms HOA. I hold no animosity towards anybody from Tofty Farms, so I think I could participate. It's a separate entity anyway, so just putting it out there to be clear.
Okay. Also, any member...
I live in Tofty Farms, but I plan to participate.
Okay. Well, I live right off 12th Avenue on Redwood, which is a block from Tofty Farm, so, or this development, but I will participate. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Well, I drive by it every day, so. Does any member of the audience have any questions for any commissioner regarding conflict of interest or ex parte contact? No? The public hearing will be conducted as follows. A staff report, questions if any by the hearing body or staff, then open public hearing for testimony. Applicant not more than 15 minutes, proponents not more than 5 minutes, opponents not more than 5 minutes each, neutral not more than 15 minutes each, and rebuttal by the applicant not more than 10 minutes. Then the hearing will be closed to public testimony, questions by the hearing body, if any. A discussion and deliberation will be conducted, and a decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date you will receive. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure outlined in this report? Okay, Brian, or whoever's going to give the staff report.
Sandy's going to help us out.
Are we on? Can you hear me? Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Sandy Freund with the City of Canby Planning Department. And as you said, this is a request by the applicant, Tofty LLC, to develop a 16-lot single-family residential subdivision within the R1 zoning district. And let's see. There we go. The subject property is located approximately in the southeastern quadrant of the city and immediately adjacent to property in unincorporated Clackamas County to the east, developed properties to the south, west, and north across Southeast 13th Avenue, and all the properties are zoned R1. The property located at the northeast corner of the subject site, which is in yellow on the PowerPoint slide, is developed with an existing single-family home and is located within the urban growth boundary. However, it is outside of the city limits. The subject property is currently undeveloped, except for several agricultural buildings which will be demolished at the time of development. And the project site, again, is within the R1 zoning district, which requires a minimum of 7,000 square foot lots and a maximum of 10,000 square foot lots, and the applicant is within compliance of those parameters. And all municipal services will be extended to serve the development accordingly. I wanted to do this overlay that you see there, this superimposed site plan of the subdivision over the existing conditions so you can get an idea for it. Of particular note for this project is basically two key points: the street connectivity and the continuation of the sidewalks from the adjacent Tofty 2 farms, just to the south of, or to the bottom of that slide that you see. The adjacent development, Tofty 2, did anticipate the extension of the internal street grid, therefore the continuation of Southeast 13th Place, which is right here on the top, and Southeast 14th, which is here, and South Redwood Street, which meets Ponderosa here. Southeast 15th Avenue. And then South Redwood Street would continue this way to the north. Each street will provide for the continuation of the sidewalks as well as the landscape strip along South Redwood Street, which is here. And the sidewalk along Southeast 13th Avenue to the top of the screen here will be continued as well, with smaller landscape strip and tree wells and a brick facade / block wall fence to be determined. So the applicant did complete a preliminary traffic study. It did not result in a larger traffic impact analysis due to the minimal traffic impacts of the project. The projected total daily vehicle trips is anticipated to be 151 trips, with 12 a.m. peak hour trips and 16 p.m. hour peak trips. And the traffic memo is in attachment E of your staff report, which is page 44 of 65. Again, all street and sidewalk connectivity will be in accordance with the City Transportation System Plan and the Public Works Design Standards. The applicant did conduct the required neighborhood meeting and public noticing, and to date, staff has not received comments from the public and only comments from engineering regarding the proposed project. Let me see. The proposal is in compliance with all the applicable criteria, standards and criteria of the planning ordinance, and those can be found on page 3 of the staff report and are addressed throughout the staff report for your reference. And then lastly, I have one housekeeping item for you. We sent out a supplemental memo on Friday, December 5th, which you should have in front of you. And that was simply to provide minor edits to conditions of approval numbers B7 and B8 on page 9 of the staff report. And the edits are in bold font. It was a cleanup. And I had a small grammatical error on page 6 of the staff report. I forgot the TH on 13th, but that's neither here nor there. So based on the application submitted and the facts, findings, and conclusions of this report, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve subdivision SUB 19-02, subject to the conditions of approval as stated. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I'm open for any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, this is a question for staff. It's a minor point. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the inference. I'm on page 2.
Okay.
Bottom paragraph, the final sentence. The applicant has proposed only 16 residential lots for the proposed project, thereby not maximizing the full development potential of said subdivision. I'm just curious, you know, it's in compliance,
Right.
you know, what's the import of that sentence that staff has included? I'm just...
I have it in my mind. I guess if you take the 4.06 acres in a perfect vacuum, you could reach a maximum of 22 lots gross or 20 net. And so the applicant could have squeezed out more lots in a perfect world, but because we're not working in a perfect world and there's a street grid that has to be aligned, they were able to realize only 16.
It seems like the street grid is the major culprit here.
It is.
For the lack of an extra lot or two.
The layout, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did speak to the applicant earlier this afternoon and got a little more clarity on that as well, so.
Just to be clear, this is all very good work. I just saw that one sentence. I want to make sure I got everything about that. So
That's a great question. I appreciate it.
You probably have no idea what the answer to this is, but is there any concern at all with how close in proximity this is to the gun club? I'm looking on Google Maps right now, and it looks like the closest house is about 1,200 feet away from the rifle range there.
As the crow flies.
Yeah, have we gotten complaints from the other houses that are close there? I mean...
I have not received any comments or complaints from anybody with concerns.
Okay.
To my
I don't
knowledge.
know if that's under our purview anyway, to put something like they're not supposed to complain, but...
Gun club was there before the houses were,
Well, I agree with you.
and I have one of those houses.
So far, so good.
Hey, You know, the country guys were here before the city slickers were.
I like it. All right. That was just my thought when I was looking
That's
at it
good.
today, is I thought, man,
Yeah.
that's awful close, but
Yeah.
There are new residents to Canby all across the city
Yeah.
that hears the gun club. And so we hear from people that are at Territorial Road about that.
well, and that's we have no jurisdiction over that gun club anyway, right? It's in Clackamas County. So
Right.
what concerns me is that we have, potential people from out of town moving into this neighborhood, and they're moving into what they may consider a nuisance, and
Right.
I don't want the gun club having to, worry about that kind of stuff either, I guess is what I get at.
As a life member of that gun club and pretty much know what's going on down there, they take all this construction into great consideration and have added a lot of safety features, and also they're adding big baffles to reduce the noise. So the gun club wants to be a good neighbor, and I think they really are.
Sounds good to me.
Any other questions?
I had one question. So that looks like the future Redwood Street right-of-way will be really close to the an existing home there.
Mhm.
In the future, when that property develops, they'll most likely need to remove that home in order to comply with setback requirements. Is that correct?
That would all be reviewed at that time, sure.
I'm just wondering if the layout, I think it causes that that property owner for future development would require them to remove the home.
Well, we don't know what that future property owner is going to do. I would hedge a guess that if they were going to develop that property, then they would split it into lots, that as much as they could eke out of that lot, and then it would be redesigned accordingly, because they would have to provide for the half-street improvement for the extension of South Redwood.
The other limitation is it's really important that it line up with
Yeah.
South
Redwood
Redwood
Street.
across the
Right.
13th, and that's a really important engineering factor, as you would know, and
Yeah.
so there's not much bending that you can really do at that location to avoid that inevitability. And that property, as Sandy said, is not in the city limits. They would have to annex, and at that point, they would decide if they want to redevelop, because I doubt that they'll annex until there is a desire to redevelop the property. Wouldn't be much advantage to them to do that.
Yeah, lining up the streets really the big thing there, so
It is.
how much you can do. Thank you.
Okay, can we hear from the builder?
Well,
Pass it down to maybe
Builder, good evening. My name is Tony Weller, and I'm with CES Northwest. We're the engineering, surveying, planning firm that's assisting the Tofties on this project. And just as a note, we were involved in the first 3 or 4 or 5 phases of it as well.
Could you give your address, Mr. Weller?
Sure. It's 13190 Southwest 68th Parkway, Suite 150, Tigard, Oregon.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So I don't really have a lot to add. This is basically the project that the road's designed. It was kind of planned this way, I think, from one of the first phases. There's not a lot of options as far as lot layout or street configuration. We pretty much have to connect all the street stubs. All the utilities are provided. And I think staff gave an excellent report. So I'm here to answer any questions, if you have any, and no reason to be redundant.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, I guess you're done then.
I'm still here if one comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any proponents for this application? Any opponents? Okay. Then we'll go to a neutral testimony, but has something to say, Mr. Canberra.
Good evening. My name's Bob Camber. I live at 1338 North Maple Street. I've got 3 points that I'd like to bring to the Commission's attention. First of all, I want to thank the Planning Department. They've done a very good job with the layout of this and the explanations and the conditions that are spelled out. It was very easy to read. The second one is I'd like to, once again, there's a condition, wrote it down. It's under section 6, conditions of approval, B, number 15, which talks about street easement signs and striping. And condition 15 talks about having to provide a flagger for the construction times where construction trucks are going through. And it listed as necessary. I'd like to bring to the Commission the need to maybe consider making it required that there be a flagger there when construction trucks are flowing through any of the neighborhoods, which in this case, with the construction sequence that they're going to be using, they are going to be using neighborhood streets, probably, 13, 14, and 15. I've had construction done on my street, and I've also watched construction being done on North Pine and Oak, and the huge big trucks that are flowing through. They're being paid, I suspect, by a number of loads that they carry per hour. So they move very quickly. And they're very big. And I do think in those narrow neighborhoods, it would be in the best interest of the whole community. I love it that we're having flaggers put in as a condition. I wish that the proposal was a little bit tighter, that if you're going to run construction trucks through the neighborhood streets as opposed to a separate outlet, that there be a flagger there to marshal this and to make it much more safer. That's my one suggestion to you folks. The second comment is regarding section 3, which is subject, I'm trying to give you guys the sections because I was told you need to be specific. Section 3, which is summary of findings under F, which talks about traffic impact. Nowhere does the traffic impact that they did does not talk about the impact that all these developments are having on the intersection of Ivy and 13th. As you know, that's probably one of the main lighted intersections that is going to be impacted. Now, I'm not talking about Toffee Farm being the main contributor of all that, but they are a contributor in a small way. There's 16 homes there. But you add in all the new development of Timber Park, now Toffee Farms. You add in all the development that is being created out of the area around Hope Village area that's being developed. You take into account the new development that's going to, I'm sure it's going to come someday, along the back end of Toffee Farms, that to the river. All of that is contributing to that light having a very difficult time meeting all of those needs, especially left-hand turns. That light does not accommodate, I believe, a separate left turns in its sequence. If you talk to anybody who has to use that light sequence during rush hour, you know that's an increasing problem. All of these traffic studies minimizes that impact. They say, well, compared to Beaverton, compared to every place else, it's not as bad. I would ask you to consider that we need to collect some systems charges from every one of these developments, and so that when we need that light change, to change the sequence so that they have regulated left turns built into those sequences, we won't be caught short. That then falls on the whole citizen of this city to have to pay for those charges. That we should be collecting system charges because we know it's going to happen, and it's going to happen sooner than later. Thank you for your time. Does anybody have any questions?
I want you to know there is a left turn signal on the ivy portions of that light.
Thank you. So we need it on the other sides too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that in any way?
I can, I should, I guess. Just the first item that was brought up was on condition on section 15, was about the flagging. And that part of it, that condition was also that during the pre-construction conference meeting, which is before construction starts, they meet with the city staff. There'll have to be a traffic plan for construction traffic. We're going to try to see what we can do to actually minimize the any access through the existing residential part. If we can use part of the South Redwood Lane that's on the east edge and lead out to 13th that way, that'll be part of what we're trying to consider, is minimizing the traffic through the subdivision portion there as much as possible. So that's something that we've already talked to staff about during the pre-application conference. It was actually that far back. On the traffic, I believe there already are traffic SDC fees, and certainly in the future, if a large project comes through, like the area south of the river, that will be there'll be a more detailed traffic report for the project that size, and there will likely be mitigation improvements required for a project of that size, and it's certainly appropriate for that.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll close unless there's anybody else out there, we're going to close it for public testimony and start deliberating here. Okay, it's closed to public testimony. Any questions by the commissioners?
I've got another question for Sandy. The South Redwood Lane is outside city limits and outside their growth boundary. Is that why it's not being required to be updated or improved?
I don't know why it's not being included. That could be a factor. If I had to guess, I would think that perhaps, and maybe Brian can chime in on this, that the existing street grid was found sufficient to serve this development. And it is in the county, that adjacent area.
Yeah, I would confirm that it's on the adjacent parcel that is outside the city limits and the urban growth boundary. It's a private road. We were informed it's not even a county road.
Oh, okay.
It's a private access road.
Yeah,
That explains it.
it does.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to make a decision now? Anybody else have any other questions? Do I hear a motion on SUB 19-2 Tofty Farms, number 6 subdivision?
Okay, I'll do it.
I move that we approve this development, number SUB 19-02 Toffee Farms, number 6 subdivision.
I'll second.
With the conditions of approval.
Very good, thank you. With the conditions of approval as summarized in the latest staff document. Thank you.
All right, do you have any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion Sub 19-02, Tofty Farms, number 6 subdivision passes. Okay, is there any items of interest?
So they've included item 6 on your agenda to review the final written
okay.
decision tonight as well.
Okay.
If you could take action on that.
Do I hear approval of the final decision on Tofty Farms 6 subdivision SUB 19-02?
I'll make a motion that we approve the final decision for Toffee Farms 6 subdivision SUB 19-02.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Final decision is approved. Now, is there any items of interest or report from the planning staff?
Well, there's two things. We had previously reported that we thought the Caruso Produce Industrial Project would be on the December 23rd meeting for the Planning Commission, and that has been postponed to January 13th in the new year. Therefore, we are not planning on having a meeting on December 23rd. And to go along with that, we have 2 planning commissioners who will not be with us in the new year. So we did have a certificate made for them. We did not get John's signature, thinking he'd be here tonight. So I'm not sure if someone else can sign for him, possibly, and we could hand those out this evening to them. I don't know.
We could hand them out, and maybe I could take them to them and have them sign them and
Could do that, too.
get them back to them.
We could do that.
I hate to sign
Yeah,
John's
I
name.
know.
He has such nice handwriting.
I'm sure you'll find.
Anyhow, we certainly wanted to show our appreciation for the extra effort that they put in on coming to the Planning Commission meetings, and enjoyed having you here.
May I read what it says then?
Sure.
In recognition of your time and commitment you devoted to the Planning Commission since January 2019, that's Ryan, you have provided a great deal of effort and thought in the volunteer work you have performed for the Planning Commission and the citizens of Canby, and you have certainly garnered a great deal of respect from staff and your fellow planning commissioners to go along with your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Appreciate it.
Really good getting to know you.
Yeah, you too, Lou.
And this is for Mr. Andre. Same thing, in recognition of your time and commitment you devoted to the Planning Commission since January 2018. You have provided a great deal of effort and thought in the volunteer work you have performed for the Planning Commission and the citizens of Canby. And you have certainly garnered a great deal of respect from your staff and your fellow planning commissioners to go along with your efforts. Thank you, Andre. Any guidance or items of interest from the planning commissioners?
One small item, I know this, as we have meetings canceled, sometimes I get confused, and I think maybe some of the other commissioners get a little worried about, gosh, should we have a meeting coming up or not, and we don't see a package. If there's a way we could put a reminder for staff to, like, just let us know when a meeting is canceled with a group email, if that would be okay, just to
You
confirm it.
actually get a cancellation notice in your email.
I know, I used, but the last one, I did get it, but it was after I was already really worried about it. I was, anyway, so that's already what you're doing then, huh? Okay, all right.
All right, then, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Figured I should hit the ring button.
I know.